It's time for another weekly market analysis and outlook. Let's go ahead and jump into this for March 20th through 24th. That is week number 12 out of 52. All right, so let's go ahead and first do a quick recap of what happened this week. If we look at the 1 week performance, we can see communication services, technology, and utilities leading the way in the top 3. And the bottom 3, energy, financial, and basic materials. The financial mainly being the banks and all this bank debacle. These banks are just getting crushed out there this week. 1 month relative performance, the financials, there it is right there again, there's your banks, getting just destroyed, down almost 14% in 1 month. Much of that was in just this week. So watch out, banks. So if you can't get your money out of the bank, at least short the thing and make money on your brokerage account that way, I suppose, huh? All right, let's take a look at the year-to-date performance. Pretty much everything in a downward trajectory except for the NASDAQ, which is up 15.5% year-to-date. The diamonds and the IWM are negative now for the year. SPY is not far behind. They're up only 1.4% for the year, flirting with a negative year to date. NASDAQ in a comfortable lead right now. All right, so let's take a look at our major markets. Let's start with the Russell 2000 futures on top, ETF on the bottom row. Let's start off with the monthly chart. I drew this little squiggly line here, the A and B, last week, and really this was just my projection of what I thought would likely happen. So we have A, meaning price comes down a little bit, which it has this week, and it rallies up just a little bit and then falls down further into that support about 14 to 1500 range. So that'd be scenario A. Scenario B would be it come down a little bit more and then rally up and head higher and make a higher high eventually going past 2000. That might take some time though to get to that point. I think at this point it's a coin flip. Either scenario could happen. And if we look at the weekly chart, we can see why it's a coin flip is really it's still stuck in this range since really about May, June or so of last year is when this range started. And really price has not cracked above the 2100 mark or gone below that 1700 area support. And we're really close to that support right now. I think it could come a little bit lower, and then we should start to see a little more of a stronger bounce and rally to the upside. You can see that in the IWM as well. Same exact concept, stuck in that range-bound sideways market. Price rallied up to that $200 resistance area, dropped back down. Now we're right back into that 170 support area. It might turn around right here and start to rally back up or come down a little bit more. And here's why I say that. If you look at the daily chart, price is in support right now at that 1760 area on the futures and the 172 support area on the IWM, that's the ETF. And I put rally or drop. And really this is a very important support area because if we see price rally up from here, okay, great, then we're still just stuck in that range-bound area. But we do have some newly formed resistance at that 188 area right there. So might be a little hard getting through that. And if it does, okay, you got a big resistance area directly above it at that 200 area mark. That's that weekly resistance up there. Now, if it does drop down a little bit lower, meaning it would have to break below the current support area that it's in right now. It'd be nice if it actually turned and rallied and hit up higher right now in this support. That'd show me that there's some bulls, putting some money on the table here and willing to buy this drop. However, if it does drop down lower, look again on the weekly chart, you can see there's that support there, pretty good support, the 165 support area. So I wouldn't be surprised if it dropped down a little bit lower. Honestly, I think it'd be a little more comfortable if it did drop down a little bit lower. You get obviously a little better price, but there's stronger support down there, and it's more likely that it would turn, we're just speaking probabilities here, more likely that price would turn and rally and head up higher if it can come down just a little bit lower. Same concept on the futures. If it drops down a little bit lower, it'd have to break that current support that it's in now. Okay, fine, no big deal. It comes down to that 1700 area support. That's fine. That's where I would expect it to turn and rally and head up higher from there. Just keep in mind that 1880 to 1920 or so resistance area, that should definitely have some sellers present, and you'll start to see both people taking profit there as well as some short sellers coming in to sell short. All right, the NASDAQ, let's look at that one next here. On the monthly, no real major change other than we've had a pretty good week this week. So that's looks like a big, upward candle right there. That's nice. That's bullish, which is good because quite frankly, one of these markets needed to get bullish here. It just happened to be the NASDAQ. And so we see last month that big topping tail. That was a big sign that the bears were still there. And now it's being challenged again. You can see it on the weekly chart a little more clear. It's a bearish location. We're still in that resistance there. That hasn't changed. We've been there for a while, actually. But it's a bullish week, a very strong week, in fact, for the bulls. The bulls have rallied sharply right back up into that resistance where it got dropped back down from before. So I think this is actually a really key battle that you're going to see next week right here. Is who's going to win this battle? Are the bears going to be able to push price right back down like it did before in the weeks prior? Or are the bulls here to stay? Are they going to rally this thing and challenge that higher resistance area up there? Time will tell. We'll see. No clear buy setup from this right now, so I'm not buying anything at this moment. If you are looking to actually trade something, I'd say consider the short side on this thing, but not for very long. And I'd even say go look somewhere else for shorting opportunities, because right now the NASDAQ is strong. Even though it's in that resistance area, it just keeps powering higher and higher and higher. And look on the daily chart, that $12,000 area of support that held nicely. Price rallied quickly out of there. We've had a nice strong move this week, coming right up into that 12,800 resistance area. So I think what's going to happen next week, just, looking at the outlook here, price is in resistance right now in the daily chart. It's likely to see a little bit of a sell-off or a little bit of a pullback. I would use that to start looking for some strong buying opportunities. So if you're looking for something, consider the short. But again, I wouldn't think it's going to go very long just because the NASDAQ's been the strong leader of all these major markets. That's where the strength is right now. That's where the bulls are. That's where the money is flowing into lately. So you don't want to fight that on the short side. If anything, you want to look for buying opportunities on the strong stocks, on the strong markets, okay? So just be patient. Wait for a clear signal, wait for price to rally up into that resistance, or wait for price to come into the demand support area down there before you start considering buying. All right, so that's our NASDAQ analysis. S&P 500, here we go. On the monthly chart, I put there moderately bearish, and you can see my line there. It's really projecting that downward. That's just the trajectory that we've been in. And if it does drop down into that $3,500 area, I definitely believe we would get a bounce out of that. I put a question mark, hey, you never know, but probability says, yeah, you're going to get a bounce out of that nice, big, juicy support right there. Same thing on the SPY, same exact concept. However, there's one thing that may be preventing that from happening. So for you bulls out there, you're about to get excited. All right, look at the weekly chart. Yes, it's still range bound. It's been range bound for a long time. Okay, from that 4,300 area to that 3,500 area, it really just stuck in that range. However, more recently, price has made some higher highs and higher lows. You can see that on the SPY, labeled that. You have the low back in October of 22. The higher low was right around December of 2022 that formed that higher low. Price is there right now. This is actually a very important point for this price pattern. If you're bullish or have a bullish bias, you really want that support area to hold and price to rally and make a higher high, challenging that 420 resistance area on the SPY. Because if it doesn't and drops lower down to that 360 support area, you just lost a lot of bulls. And that's communicating out there to everyone else that the S&P is just not that strong. So you really want the support area to hold and rally and head higher. And in fact, you want it to make, at least eventually, somewhat soon here, a higher high beyond that 430 resistance area. And if it can do that, you're going to see a lot more bulls come out of the forest and start charging into buying more of the S&P and some of the other equities out there. So this support area, I think, is actually quite important. So we'll see what happens on it next week. I think it looks okay right now. No real major red flags or anything like that. I like it. It looks like a good support area. The only problem I do have with it is, again, if you go back to that NASDAQ, remember it's up in that resistance area. So if this can get a rally and this support can hold and buyers come in from this support area, that will help push up the Russell and the NASDAQ markets a little bit higher up. Now, here's one of my concerns on the bearish side of this. Go to the daily. Look at the daily here. Number one, it's currently in a downtrend. We can see that pretty clearly here. So, yes, it's in a downtrend, and it very well may push down lower and then either start to rally. Might need just to make a lower low here on the daily chart, so don't be worried about that. If we have another several down days next week, it's got to come a little bit deeper in that support area and stuff like that. If that happens, then we very well may see that reversal and price heads higher. If not, if that support doesn't hold, that 3,800 area on the futures or on the SPY, looking about 375, 380, if that doesn't hold, we're heading lower to that weekly support that I told you about, the 350, 360 area. Okay, so these are very important support areas to determine not only what happens next in price, but the confidence of traders and investors. So if this support does not hold, that confidence is going to get less and less and less, and more people are going to look for excuses to sell. So quite important here. So keep that in mind. Watch it closely next week. All right, so here we go. We got weekly market updates every weekend. I'll be having new videos, so if you like it, stay tuned. If not, hey, go find something that works for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your day. God bless and good trading.